Okay, welcome in this side event. Unfortunately, it's still necessary. More than 10 years after the Strasser report, we still have a large number of political prisoners in Azerbaijan, and we're not making much progress. That's a bit of a sad story from our institutional point of view. Today, we have the case of the Azeri researcher, Dr. Gubad İbadoghlu. And because obviously we can talk about the large numbers, but it's better to discuss individual cases, people whose lives are being completely destroyed. So I was planning to have this presentation together with Suna Avesdotter, but she had to go back because a minister in Iceland resigned. I'm not so good at Icelandic government crisis, but so that's why Frank Swabe is here from the Social Democratic Party's Socialist Party from Germany. First, we have a small presentation by Gerald Knaus from the European Stability Initiative, and then we give the word to the son of Mr. Gubad İbadoghlu, who will share with us his story. So, Gerald, over to you. Start with you. Just, yeah.
Okay. Should I click on this? Or?
Yeah. Yes.
Hello. My name is Gubad Bayramov, and I'm the son of Dr. Gubad İbadoghlu. Dr. İbadoghlu was imprisoned in July 23rd of 2023, 81 days ago, in Baku, Azerbaijan. He was brutally imprisoned by the police, who psychologically abused him and also physically. They were also quite brutal towards my mother too, when she stayed in the detention for 7 hours before she got released. But to this day, she still sees nightmares about the incident because it was very brutal. They hit their car, in fact, and dragged them out of the car and put them in the separate cars and take them to the police station, where my mom, who has never been to such situation, had to stay there for 7 hours. And in fact, they also hit her in the back of her head. So, and after that, at the moment, the Dr. Gubad has been charged with more than one charges, with the selling of counterfeit money and also the terrorism, despite knowing that the charges against him are bogus and trumped up, and the witnesses that have been brought to his case are basically forced to make fake statements about him in order to justify the court session. We know that in the last hearing, Dr. Gubad, the witness that was brought has linked forced up cases against him, and this is not Dr. Gubad is not the only one who is being charged with false trumped up cases with the charges. In Azerbaijan right now, there's more than 200 political prisoners. In fact, maybe close to 250. At the moment, no one is able to predict what is the exact number because the numbers is increasing every week, and there's no independent organization to actually report on this, because most of these organizations either left the country or they were basically banned from the country. And we are seeing the increase in the numbers every week. And these people that are getting imprisoned because of their political views are from all over the spectrum. There are environmental defenders, and there are also people who are against the government politics and also government economical policies too. So it doesn't matter what's your opinion, what's your thought in Azerbaijan. As long as it's against the government policies, you will see jail time, and all the charges that are brought against you, just like the case in the Dr. İbadoghlu, is false and trumped up. Dr. İbadoghlu is a world-renowned economist who also a corruption expert, who worked on Azerbaijan government corruption issues for several years with several organizations. and his work on the corruption scandals has provided not only the people of Azerbaijan but also the international organizations about the current situation, current corruption issues within Azerbaijan. And his last work, which was actually establishing the charity fund in UK, he had the plan. He had the plan to use the finances of that charity fund to finance the Azerbaijani students who would like to study abroad, and he was going to finance the charity fund through the confiscated money from the Azerbaijani laundromats by the UK National Crime Agency. UK National Crime Agency has confiscated around £30 million worth money from the Azerbaijani laundromats, who brought the money to the UK, London, the money that actually belongs to the people of Azerbaijan, but was stolen by the government of Azerbaijan, by the ruling family and their affiliates, that brought to London by the illegal ways, by the laundering ways. The money was confiscated by the UK National Crime Agency, and had a plan to work with the UK National Crime Agency to transfer the money to that charity fund, which was registered in England and also Wales, and also use that funds to finance the students. And we could see that this was one of the main reasons why he was imprisoned, because Azerbaijan government would like to have a monopoly in every aspect, and scholarship is also one of them. And he's being charged with 2 different charges, and he could be seen the jail time up to 12 years, despite the fact that he has never done anything wrong. He's not the one who has stolen the government, who has stolen the people's money. He's not the one who is filled with corruption, but he's the one who is in prison, and not the Azerbaijani politicians. Thank you.
Thank you for your very personal story, and indeed what it does to your family, to your mother, to yourself. And it's quite painful to see that, whereas we've been making clear what the Azeri laundromat is doing, that it still exists in this way. Gerald, do you have anything to add?
Thanks a lot, Peter, and thanks a lot, Ibad. We met in Berlin a few weeks ago, and it is really extremely disturbing to see how certain issues just come back again and again and again. I think it was in 2013 that Frank Schwabe and you and we were sitting here, in 2017 that we were sitting here hoping that the issue of political prisoners would receive the attention it deserves, and that the governments of the member states of the Council of Europe would desist from so openly and blatantly violating their obligations. In Reykjavik, not that long ago, at the May summit of heads of state, we read in the declaration that when we created the Council of Europe in 1949, it was based on the belief that true democracies that uphold the rule of law and respect human rights are also the best defense against authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and war. The core idea being that it is vital for this institution to react in time when the sincere collaboration in implementing the convention doesn't exist, not only to defend what is obviously the first priority, the human rights of concrete individuals like Dr. Gubad Ibadoglu, but also for the collective security of our European democracies. And we failed in Russia, where for many years human rights abuses, attacks on dissidents, suppression of political opposition, of civil society being declared traitors or enemies, political murder was not taken as a wake-up call. There was not enough political attention paid in this city, in the Committee of Ministers, until, in fact, Russia had turned into the country that was once again attacking its neighbor. And it's vital that this lesson is learned, that we should stop being afraid, that rather on the contrary, it is better to warn early and to remind people of what David Maxwell V, one of the drafters of the European Convention on Human Rights, put in 1949 when he wrote, "There should be no doubt about the rules of our club that we've just created. No misunderstanding about the terms of which the passport of entry to our body, the Council of Europe, will be given." And the rules, as you all know here, Article 3 of the statutes, the central point is that states must collaborate sincerely and effectively. And to see opposition politicians on trumped up charges being arrested in 2023, 10 years after the Stresser report, 30 years after the current president of Azerbaijan became president in, when was it, 1990? In 2003, 20 years after he became president, to see dissent being suppressed, a new law on the media making it even harder to discuss these issues in Azerbaijan, a new law on political parties making it impossible to organize political parties. And yet the alarm bell that was supposed to be sounded, not being sounded, is depressing. We need the Council of Europe more than ever at this moment in European history. We see autocracies challenge us militarily, challenge democracies, and challenge us inside by supporting illiberal forces. And that requires credibility and support to those who are still withstanding autocratic governments. And that means we need to see stronger reactions. The Parliamentary Assembly has taken the lead in the last few years on pushing for reform. We've seen that in the case of the caviar diplomacy allegations after 2017. The Committee of Ministers has done too little. So one of my appeals here would be to use the attention that this case deserves. Somebody who's worked with European institutions, with the World Bank, with the Civil Society Forum of the European Partnership, somebody who's a respected, one of the most respected academics on corruption, on the region, who supported young Azerbaijanis. That somebody like this is being put in prison in life-threatening conditions, given his health, should immediately lead not just the Parliamentary Assembly, but also the Committee of Ministers to put that on the agenda. And to remind Azerbaijan that not only is there Article 3 about the need to collaborate sincerely and effectively, but there is also Article 8, which says that any member that seriously violates Article 3 may be suspended from its rights of representation. We've hesitated too long on Russia. I think it's time to give a clear signal that given the repetition of the same kinds of violations in Azerbaijan, on the most serious issue, which is to put in prison people on trumped up charges, the recycling of the same problems, and the absence of any sincere wish to collaborate, that the Committee of Ministers will not watch this again. So perhaps in addition to the Parliamentary Assembly issuing its warnings, we can also get a warning from other member states to say that if Dr. Gubad is not released quickly, that Azerbaijan is violating Article 3, and that the Committee of Ministers should take finally, belatedly, and hopefully successfully, decisive steps it has not taken in the past. And you are doubtful they will? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit doubtful on that, since they haven't done for the last 10 years. And well, tomorrow, obviously, we have the issue of Azeri prisoners, and we have the issue of your father being in prison, and lots of other people getting imprisoned with trumped-up charges. But I think the issue of what happened to the citizens of Nagorno-Karabakh, I mean, I understand the internal problems in Azerbaijan, but if it ends up with evicting 120,000 of your citizens to a neighboring country of a minority in your neighboring country, and the Council of Ministers still not taking any action, then there is a serious issue whether the Council of Ministers will ever take action on Article 3. But this will be debated tomorrow again. And in my view, it looks like Azerbaijan is benefiting from the fact that it's a member of the Council of Europe to show to the rest of the world that it may not be a perfect democracy. They will perfectly admit that they're not perfect. but it still gets a seal of approval from the rest of the European nations that it still belongs to the semi-democratic family. Whereas there are severe doubts whether Azerbaijan is a democracy and a rule of law, because it seems like that the ruling passes from the father to the son than it does in democracy terms. So I think the Council of Europe has for a long time underestimated the benefits of countries that stay a member with all the reports, that it's still hugely beneficial to them. And that's why they should take Article 3 more serious. But to be quite frank, when I asked questions to the Council of Ministers on the Nagorno-Karabakh, which I did 8 weeks ago, when Mr. Ocampo said, "Look, listen, we are close to something like a genocide," and I think in the event there wasn't mass starvation, but there was a mass expulsion, which is in a clear convention of international human rights, and the Council of Ministers still has to answer the questions. And it's the same speed in which we deal with political prisoners. When I was here 15 years ago, I've been here for 19 years, and I remember just in the early 2000s, when our committee, Legal Affairs, would send a letter, or the monitoring committee would send a letter to a country saying, "By chance, do you think that person might be a political prisoner?" Usually you wouldn't get an answer, but the person would be released, and they would write a letter, "Well, the person is not in prison any longer." And that was the desired effect, yeah? Whereas now, well, we see the case of Mr. Kavala in Turkey. As long as Turkey can flout the Kavala case, which went all the way to the European Court of Human Rights, and which has huge exposure, as long as the Council of Europe doesn't intervene in these high-profile cases and keeps it draws a red line, then in the slightly lower profile cases, like the case of your father, which is obviously lower profile because he's not there yet, countries get away with it. And that's what I'm seeing at the moment. So that's why it remains important to mention it, to keep asking questions, but it also remains important to form a common front here in the Council of Europe. And that's what's missing a little bit. Is there anything you would like to ask us, or do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I can add, if it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I would like to add about, because I now have in front of me the action plan from Azerbaijan, which was signed between the Miss Maria Bulic, the Secretary General of Council of Europe, and also the Minister of Justice of Azerbaijan, which is a plan for 2022-2025. We are nearing 2024, so most of the part have already been behind us. And there are points like improving the implementation of the European Convention on Human Rights and the European Court of Human Rights. That's one of the points. That's actually the first point. Here I have a paper actually, which is from the European Human Rights Court, which says that Azerbaijan government must provide adequate medical examination to Dr. Ibadoghlu, and also provide the results with the European Human Rights Court. He has been asking for a doctor for more than a week because his condition has become so dire, the medical condition, he is now having a hard time standing up, and he's not getting any doctor at all. So what's the point of having this this action plan, if the decision of the European Human Rights Court will not be respected by the Azerbaijan government? And there's also another point, which is ensuring the fundamental freedoms. This plan was from 2022, in which in September 2022, we know that there was 99 political prisoners in Azerbaijan. Right now, a year later, there's more than 200. Is it like going backwards, I suppose, because at the point, and also there's another point, which is improving the criminal justice system, and the criminal justice system as weak and as corrupted as it used to be. Bringing in every cases, together with the Dr. Ibadoghlu's cases, bringing false witnesses and false charges in order to justify the trial system. So I think the action plan in general and the whole situation in Azerbaijan, the action plan has backfired, and the whole political situation or whole human rights recourse of Azerbaijan has been deteriorating in a very fast fashion. And I don't see any improvement as long as there wouldn't be any strict measures, because people are getting imprisoned for any kind of talks they have which would not align with the government policies. This is far from what the democratic values are standing for. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks a lot for this reminder, and I think we are really at a historical turning point. I mean, this is a moment we remember. There was just a meeting in Granada where basically the same member states that are members of the Council of Europe created the European Political Community, which has no court, no statutes, no secretariat, no institutions, basically no defined values. But it's there, it's meeting regularly, and it seems like this institution might become less and less relevant, more and more marginal. We have a situation where judgments, I was just recently in Paris at a meeting on implementation of judgments of the committee responsible. If we just look at leading court judgments under enhanced supervision, so the most important cases and the leading cases, there have been by last summer, summer 22, 23 such cases for Azerbaijan, implemented and closed 2. And other countries in Europe are following in the same footsteps. If a country like Azerbaijan, where the freedom of media are now assessed by Reporters Without Borders, the worst in the former post-Soviet space except Turkmenistan, so it's basically in the category with Turkmenistan. If that's fine, or if a party law that leads to half the parties in the country disappearing because you can basically no longer register parties, if that's fine, if those are the benchmarks, then the question will be asked, what's the specific value added of this institution? And then, of course, we might have meetings of the same leaders in a different framework where there are no values and no courts and no nuisance because nobody really discusses human rights. But this institution will be lost at the very moment when we need it most, when autocracies are attacking Europe and when parties that want to destroy the European Convention on Human Rights are doing very well in elections in a lot of our old founding member states. So in fact, it's becoming an issue not just for Azerbaijan and not just for individuals who are brave enough to defend these values, like your father. It's becoming an issue of credibility for the whole of Europe. And last week I was at the invitation of the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, in the city hall in Paris. There was a discussion on caviar diplomacy. And I raised the question there for France, one of the founding members of the Council of Europe, why it is not using the chance that one of these great institutions linked to the European Convention, based in Strasbourg, which we need more than ever, to define, together with Germany and the Netherlands and other founding members, a vision to get back to a day, and I just quote one statistic, back to a day when in December 1990, of 68 judgments of the court which found a violation, only 2 were unexecuted 5 years later, where non-execution was simply not acceptable, where pressure was put, and where in a case like this, where countries are arresting people for years and years and years, the Committee of Ministers, which in the end needs to come in as well, needs to take strong action. So it gets to the core of the credibility and future of this institution.
You want to say anything? No. And that is actually the main point. But that's why I was mentioning Azerbaijan does not only flout the judgments of this court, but it even flouts the ICC judgments at the moment. There's an interim judgment on the Lachin corridor. And if a country can do that without any consequences, then one wonders what this institution will be, because it has no army, it only has the rule, and it should take sanction against countries which flout the rules openly, not just a mistake or a weak delay. That's all fine, that happens. And that's the situation we're unfortunately in. And in my view, if we stick to this, first we let Russia get away with first attacking Georgia. We didn't take much action. Then we took a bit of action when it invaded Crimea. But after 3 years, Russia was allowed to come back. Then we got the war in Donbass, MH17. And only when we had a large-scale invasion did we finally kick Russia out. Turkey is on the same path. Kavala is the most eminent case, but there are lots of cases where Turkey doesn't stick to it. And Azerbaijan is on the same path. But right now, because there's so much happening in the world, we might see that there may be a new flashpoint anywhere. I mean, I'm very worried what's happening in the north of Kosovo with the Serbs. If you don't have that, you stick to the rules, then stronger parties will take advantage of it. And that's what's happening all over Europe. And that's, I think, the price we're now paying. And that's the price your father is paying, but that's the price you're paying in general. And I think we're into a situation in which we first need to realize it, just like we realized the beautiful speeches of Winston Churchill after the war, why you needed a Council of Europe in his Swiss lecture. But we seem to have forgotten what was in there, because it went so well for 70 years that we did not think about not executing judgments, that we took it for granted, and it's not for granted. So we need to see this at two levels. And that's first the level of Azerbaijan, what do we do with Azerbaijan? And secondly, at the level, how do we keep this institution? And this institution is more in danger than most people here seem to realize. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions, anything to add? And please give your name so everyone knows who you are, even if I do, maybe some other people don't.
Thank you. My name is Emil Singer. I'm an Azerbaijan human rights defender and journalist. One of the who's also in the beginning exposed this kind of diplomacy when we give our testimonies to Secretary General. Remember, nobody listening to that. They said, well, we have evidence how the Azerbaijan government distributes the envelope of money. Did you see what's happened? What's inside the envelope? I said, well, no, but something strange because their envelope is before voting. I've spent in this house like 15 years of my life. Like every parliamentary assembly sessions, I spent until 2013. Fortunately, I'm able to come from my own country from 2005. But since from 2014, I'm continuing my work in exile in Switzerland, but still working on Azerbaijan. And you know, the reason why we have this situation is not only dictatorship in Azerbaijan, it's a lot of attention on the member states from leading European democracies, including like France, UK, and other like-minded states. Because if Ibad mentioned like action plan, I would like to say, well, you know, it's third action plan which is implemented to promote and defend European values, Council of Europe values in Azerbaijan. But it's one of the useless mechanisms, because why now we have less people from Azerbaijan here? Because Azerbaijan civil society is staying in the struggle. Since Azerbaijan government changed the law with political party law, civil society law, made the law, we're not able to get funds from EU. And we are staying in exile. We're going to European foundations and ask, could you provide us support to promote to prepare strong human rights support? And nobody said, well, Azerbaijan is not more in the radar, but we say we don't have money. But European Union today, every day, during the current action plan, they spend 10 million euros for 3 years. It's European taxpayers' money for defending human rights and rule of law in Azerbaijan. And this money distributed between Gongos. I'm already tired to complain to the Council of Europe officials, and now I'm saying again here. We just met a few months ago with Klaus Nerkrisch, director of the Council of Europe Directorate, and his Secretary General representative of Human Rights Transparency. They spend 10,000 euros every day, imagine, to defend human rights, but many 220 political prisoners staying in Azerbaijan without access to the lawyers, because nobody from civil society able to pay for lawyers who is defending human rights, who is representing these victims in the European Court for Human Rights. We have lots of tons of problems, unfortunately. But since we try to raise awareness of people when they see us, like politicians, like PACE members, they are saying, guys, we're all crazy tired. Nothing changed. And we also that Mr. Homtek mentioned for Azerbaijan get some benefits. No, it's not Azerbaijan. It's only Ali himself and his family.
Sorry, yeah.
People of Azerbaijan not get any benefit. We are trying to be part of the Europe. Azerbaijan, the European official says, like Ursula von der Leyen, she went to Azerbaijan and denied to meet with civil society because she signed MOU on gas deal after Russian aggression to Ukraine. And when we ask, oh guys, why you not meet with the civil society? Because it's part of, we are also stakeholders, even we are not government. But they denied and said, well, if you meet with you guys, Ali never signed MOU on gas with us. So we need to be clear with us. We already also we lose our hope because we tried until the end defend Council of Europe values in our own country, but sometimes we see we are staying alone and some European bureaucrats betray their own European values, unfortunately. And without support, without collaboration and equal participation of all stakeholders, it's impossible to change anything. And we would like to ask all of the families, what do we need to do? Do we need to still wait 20 more years? Because Azerbaijan already 22 years have a full membership in the Council of Europe. Maybe it's time to just tell to all Azerbaijani government, including Azerbaijani people, for guys, go do whatever you can do for yourself. But because people in Azerbaijan, 10 million population, they have a hope. They say, well, you're supposed to save us. We understand it's our own job to save ourselves. But until we have a membership in the Council of Europe, it's difficult to us think, make it deal with our own people, because they say, well, look, European like guardian angels supposed to defend or help us, but when they leave us alone, imagine, we can't survive. And now it's the case with Gubad, many other people. It's 220 political prisoners to be somehow able to counting these people. But maybe it's more. It's maybe more than 1,000 political prisoners in Azerbaijan. And we would like to listen to you. Why you not establish, for example, new position on political prisoners? Why it's not more interesting? Because my question is, we asked members of Parliamentary Assembly to make it a motion for resolution to appoint a new rapporteur on political prisoners in Azerbaijan. Do you think it's time to appoint a new rapporteur as like Strasser, not general rapporteur like Sunna over the Dozer, but a new special rapporteur who is able to investigate all of these cases? Thank you.
Thank you. We need to discuss this. I think we might need a permanent rapporteur, but that's obviously something like the defeat of the whole system. The idea is that you have a rapporteur, you solve part of the issues, and you go on. So you have a permanent rapporteur on death penalty or on inhuman treatment. But if you have a permanent rapporteur on a country, then obviously you'll give up on the country somehow. But I think we need a new report. Jeremy.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy Corbyn, Member of Parliament for Britain, and Dr. Ibadoglu used to live in my community. And the message for him is surely that we need to take action very, very quickly. He has a dangerous medical condition. There is an interim statement from the European Court of Human Rights that he needs an independent medical assessment as quickly as possible. The last medical report on him was written in London some months ago, and obviously his condition has changed during that time. And he is not getting the medical support he needs. He's not even able to stand up properly at the present time. And so I think we need to have a very, very strong and very urgent message from this meeting and from the Council of Europe that we are seized of this case and of the other cases of political prisoners, and we demand his immediate release. A delegation is planned to go to Azerbaijan, and this building can be fearsomely bureaucratic and slow when it wants to be, but it's also capable of doing things very quickly if it wants to do them. And so my message is, and having spent some time this morning talking to about his father's condition, that we need to send a delegation urgently to Azerbaijan to raise this case, and of course the whole principle about political prisoners and the way in which they're held, because the European Convention on Human Rights, and from that the European Court of Human Rights, and from that the Council of Europe, and from that the Parliamentary Assembly, all have basic rules about democracy, about the right to a fair trial, about the right to free speech, about the right to academic freedom, the right to press freedom, and all the other freedoms that we enjoy. If they're being breached and nothing is said and nothing is done, then as you're quite right, people just carry on doing that. So can we use Dr. Ibadoghlu's case as something that is urgent and important? Because I really fear for his health from everything I've heard and read about this, and urgent action needs to be taken. He is a very respected academic, extremely knowledgeable about corruption and finance, and was a professor at the London School of Economics, which is about as good as you can get in being professor of economics. And that just showed, well, okay, we were going to bring up another university now, but it's all right.
Florence isn't bad.
It's a good university, all right, will that do you? Thank you. Goodness, this competition is shocking. He is obviously somebody that anyone that's up to bad business is going to be fearful of, because he understands what is going on. Should we just say it quite simply, release him now to give him the medical attention he needs, release him now to carry on with his important academic work, and let that be a message in support of all the other political prisoners in Azerbaijan. Let's just say that loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. That's extremely clear. Any other one who wants to make a comment? Thanks for coming. Thanks a lot for telling us about your father, your personal impact, the impact it has on your mother, and the impact it has on your country. What Husseini rightfully mentioned, it's there is a difference between the country and the government of the country, and there shouldn't be. In a normal democratic society, at least, you should have the feeling that the government at least represents its people. We think, Jeremy, we should think whether we should do this by an urgent visit, or maybe ask a question to the Committee of Ministers to raise this question with Azerbaijan, or to do something, but we'll discuss that between us, I think. Unless you have
well, I think we need to do both, basically, to raise the questions, but also if there is some problem about the speed of this delegation, which I find deeply depressing if that is a problem, then I'll certainly raise the issue again in the UK Parliament. I've raised it there already, we'll raise it again. I think we should be just putting all the pressure on we can, and there's no reason why individual members of national parliaments can't just demand to visit Azerbaijan. That can't do any harm, and in fact I think that's maybe a road we should go. It's not, there isn't any one simple road.
No,
there's lots of roads on this, and we should look down every road we can.
Maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Taking into account that even the International Committee of Red Cross has been denied 3 times from visiting Dr. Ibadoghlu, and there are many other organizations who requested to examine Dr. Gubad İbadoghlu's health condition. I mean, I know that not only Dr. Gubad İbadoghlu, but there was a European country's ambassador who requested to see Bakhtir Haji a few months ago, and Azerbaijan Minister of Foreign Affairs did not even respond to the ambassador. I think this should not be, the decision should not be left with the Azerbaijan government whether someone could visit someone in prison, because then they are able to, if no one is able to see these people, Azerbaijan government could come up with any kind of rights. And I would tell one that they have been, the request for the house arrest has been denied 21 times for Dr. Ibadoghlu, because they have declared that his medical conditions is satisfactory, which is not, but we cannot prove it because no one is able to see him. So no medical examination from third party, which means that Azerbaijan government could tell whatever they want to tell, and no one cannot bring any proof against it. So it's very important to actually visit the political prisoners, because otherwise the Azerbaijan government would just come up with a statement that they would like to, and no one can say that it's true or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, Jeremy. And I wish I could say this is the last time we talk about political prisoners in Azerbaijan, but unfortunately I will assure you that we keep this on the agenda. Thank you.